The eyes of the world on what is unfolding in Israel right now. South Florida's members of Congress are united and unwavering in support. But the U.S. House is in the middle of its own drama, a vacancy of leadership. Congressman Carlos Gimenez, Republican from Miami, right here via Zoom with us. Hello, Congressman.
How you doing, Glenna?
You know, I thought we'd be having a very different conversation when we spoke about this a couple of days ago, and we can talk about that in a moment. But I really want to start out with, I'm not sure if you were able to hear our conversation with the Consul General. You and so many of the congressmen and women have been so supportive, but you in particular have been really taking a leading role in Israel's support. In fact, in May, you had proposed connecting and combining and joining law enforcement efforts. I want to get your take on how you think intelligence failed yesterday morning.
Well, look, I think we're focusing in too much on intelligence failure right now. We're in the middle of a war. These are terrorists. Obviously, have gone into Israel. They're murdered hundreds of people. How Hamas was able to pull it off by surprise, that's going to be something we're going to have to look into and see what happened and how it happened. But right now, we're more focused on how Israel can defend itself and Israel's right to defend itself and how we can help here in the United States, especially in Congress, to make sure that Israel comes out victorious and that this never happens again, or at least to this scale. They are at war. When somebody launches 5,000 rockets at you, yeah, that's a war. Yeah. And my fear is that the northern front will be opened up by Hezbollah. They have estimated well over 100,000 rockets. And so, you know, let's pray for Israel, but also let's give Israel the tools that they need and the support that they need to carry out this fight and carry out to victory.
And in fact, we have some intelligence this morning that Hezbollah in the north has taken at least some credit for one attack in the north on Sheba Farms, and that'll be developing today. But so this Israeli operation is underway. As you heard, it is predicted to be pretty brutal, and there are some that think that Hamas does provoke Israel into that to use that for their own propaganda. I wonder if you could specify what you're talking about. What would you support as a response? How far would you go with money, support, and possibly military? Can you say?
Well, look, I don't think that Israel needs our military support. They need arms, they need weapons, they need additional Iron Dome missiles, anti-rocket missiles, that kind of stuff, and our support. I think Israel has the capability, the capacity to defend itself. However, if it ever comes a time where Israel needs our help, I'm certainly there. Israel is our strongest ally in the Middle East. They share our values. And I am extremely pro-Israel, and I always have been, and I always will be extremely pro-Israel. I'm concerned that, yes, we do have strong bipartisan support right now, but there's a growing number of people on the other side of the aisle that are not supporting Israel. You'd be surprised at how many no votes we get when we put out resolutions in support of Israel, and that number is growing. And that's concerning me. But for right now, there is strong bipartisan support for the state of Israel, especially from all of the representatives down here in South Florida.
I was going to say that those no votes never come from South Florida, not in our neck of the woods.
No, they don't. No.
So I thought we would be talking all about the departure of the speaker, and you from the get-go were a Team McCarthy guy, and we talked a lot about that this week. But in context of what we are talking about today with all this breaking news, the absence of a speaker, you go back to Washington on Tuesday?
No, tomorrow. We go back tomorrow. They're going to have some kind of a forum tomorrow for the members.
So tomorrow you'll be hashing out whether you can go back in those chambers and have support for somebody to fill that seat. But in the absence, what can Congress do without a speaker besides a resolution? There can't be policy, there can't be funding. What can be done?
There can't even be a resolution. We can't take anything to the floor. So once we don't have a speaker, that's it. Things stop. Maybe some committees can continue to do their work, get research, et cetera, but nothing can come to the floor without a Speaker of the House. And that's why the actions of Matt Gaetz were so reckless. And look where we are today. Now we are a rudderless House. Now we have to scramble to find a leader. Now, I'm not looking for a new leader. I got a leader. His name is Kevin McCarthy. And if we can somehow convince Kevin McCarthy to reconsider his decision not to run or seek office again, I'm voting for Kevin McCarthy.
So
And so I'm not convincing anybody else.
just
Yeah.
hearing that and watching what other people are saying in interviews, it seems like there's going to be a great big impasse and a lot of time here.
Listen, the last thing we do need is an impasse, but the facts are 210 Republicans voted to maintain or keep Kevin McCarthy as Speaker of the House. 8 did not. I think it's going to be a heck of a lot easier to convince 8 to change their vote than it is to try to find who is it going to be? Is it going to be Steve Scalise or is it going to be Jim Jordan? Two men which I highly respect. But I don't respect them as much as I respect our former speaker. He is our leader. And so I would hope that he would reconsider and come back. And I think that he would have broad support. And it's just a question of, can we get those 8 to change their mind, or at least 4 of them to change their mind? And then we can move on. But we also need to change that rule. That rule for one member to do a motion to vacate is insane. We've demonstrated how insane it really is. And we need to change that rule. And so any way that we move forward, the rule has to change. And if I had my druthers, I'd like to see Kevin McCarthy back in that seat.
I want to ask you something I asked the Consul General from your perspective. Part of what the House is going through right now is over Ukraine funding and the controversial components of that. But now that in the last 24 hours, the game has changed in the Middle East, and because of a strong support for Israel, do you think Ukraine funding and that fight portends anything for the Israel support or vice versa?
I don't think that, look, there's strong bipartisan support for Israel, and also there's strong bipartisan support for funding Ukraine. Look, as much as people, I don't like some of the things that are being said about Ukraine, et cetera, but at the end, if we pull out of Ukraine now, then all of our security partners around the world will say, whoa, is the United States, what kind of security partner is the United States? And by the way, Ukraine is holding our second greatest adversary at bay with 5% of our defense spending. And I think that's pretty good value. But no, one has no bearing on the other. Ukraine, Israel, they're two separate issues. I am very, very pro-Israel, always have been. And I'm pro-freedom. And if Ukraine has the will to fight, which they do, and they're holding the Soviet Union or the old Soviet Union, Russia, at bay and making gains against them, an aggressor that's trying to conquer their land. And I think we as the United States who love freedom need to support them. We're not shedding our blood. They're shedding their blood. They're saying, just give us the weapons. I think we should. I think it's a good investment. Israel, separate story. I'm going to go to the wall for Israel.
Congressman Carlos Gimenez, I promised to get you out at noon. I missed that mark, but by not too many minutes. And I thank you for your time this morning. And we have a lot more to talk about, so I know you'll be back.
Thank you.